Okay, perfect. Well, welcome everybody to Expel's Winning Your Cybersecurity Chess Match webinar. We'll be talking about different strategies for cloud security success through an analogy of chess. I'm your host, Ethan Chen. I'm a product manager here at Expel, and mostly I focus on finding different solutions to different customer challenges in the cloud. So that's me. I'll hand it off to Jake to give his introduction.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. Jake Gillen, Solutions Architect with Expel. Got almost 30 years in the field, security and networking mostly. The last eight focused on sales engineering or solutions architecture. Last three of that with, or nearly three of that with Expel. Started doing security and really as a specialty in about the year 2000 or so, and learned a lot along the way. So glad you're here, and hopefully we can have some good conversation today.
And Jake, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Ethan. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining this webinar, and thanks, Expel, for hosting me here. My name is Ashok Mahajan, and I'm a Senior Partner Solution Architect at Amazon Web Services. I'm part of the global startup team focusing on startups, and in my role specifically, I work with security startups in their enablement journey on AWS that focuses on co-build and go-to-market motions. I've been in information security for close to 18 years now, with expertise in identity and access management, application security, data protection, and cloud migration across multiple domains.
Sweet. Perfect. So this is our agenda for today. We just finished introductions, and now we're going to jump into the trends of cloud security, and then we'll have some quick discussion with our speakers on different problems in the cloud and how we think about facing them. Then we'll have some live Q&A. So before I jump into all this, some quick housekeeping. Webinar is being recorded, and we will send you a link after if you want to watch anything else and want to recap anything else, you'll be able to watch it on demand. And like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in Q&A, and we will try to get to as many as we can. So now jumping into trends in cloud security. So we all know the cloud has been growing exponentially, but attacks have also been keeping pace with that growth, right? So specifically, cloud-based cyber attacks have grown by nearly half, especially driven by that kind of IAM account takeover attacks that have become more and more prevalent lately. Another attack vector is ransomware, of course, and that has more than doubled. And we see that reflected in our clients as well when we do and focus on to prevent. And with these attacks, of course, organizations are planning on increasing their budget to tackle and prevent those attacks. And here in our discussion today, we'll try to dive into how we can get the most ROI out of that new budget. So after this, keeping your cloud secure isn't easy. So of course, here are some problems in the cloud that we all know. Of course, number one, cloud complexity, right? So beyond just moving to the cloud from different mandates from organizations, there are a lot of different things you have to think about in terms of configurations, host vulnerabilities, application vulnerabilities, and that just exponentially compounds if you have multi-cloud footprints, as many organizations do. And with this complexity introduces different types of cloud security gaps, right? So making sure you have consistent coverage in terms of AWS, Azure, GCP, Oracle, etc., can be very difficult in making sure you have that consistency and clear line of sight across all of that. Then finally, cloud expertise is very hard to come by, and also the cloud is also fragmented, and the responsibility of, say, security or cloud infrastructure is kind of split amongst many teams, right? And that can make it hard to necessarily have that nice handshake to remediate, detect threats in the cloud as fast as possible. And then with all the things happening in the cloud, all the ephemeral resources and things just moving quickly in the cloud, that creates a lot of activity and that creates a lot of alerts. So, it can be overwhelming to understand what to prioritize and also what to do with the alerts that you are prioritizing. And we'll kind of tackling some of those topics today. So, how to win your cybersecurity chess match. We are kind of focusing and analogizing, the cloud and cloud threats and cloud security through chess because, it's kind of like looking at the past, the present, and the future, right? In terms of the past, you want to look back at your past games, your past opponents, understand what they've done, both, in the cloud and what have you, to try to make sure those things don't happen again. And then in real time, as you're, tackling different threats in the cloud, it's kind of like chess, right? Where you want to make sure you're making the right moves in on time pressure. And then finally, thinking ahead, you want to make sure in the cloud, you're looking at threats, risks that are coming, and making sure you're not putting yourself in a poor position. Kind of like in chess, where you don't want to put yourself in a make a move now that puts yourself in a poor position 5 moves in the future. So that's kind of why we're using chess as an analogy today. And we'll jump into the first section here. So looking back to get ahead, kind of like what I talked about in chess, we look at our past games to learn how we improve our future games, right? To understand potential gaps our opponents may have taken advantage of. So in the cloud specifically, like I said, we want to be looking at past incidents and historical data to understand how we improve our KPIs and try to share that with the community as well, to make sure our collective defense is strong. But moving into the first question here, and this will be for Jake, how can we use past security incidents to enhance our defenses in the cloud?
So first of all, thank you, Ethan. Disclaimer here: I'm not a chess master. Um, but my first thought on this is know your fundamentals. My dad taught me chess when I was a kid, and the one thing I remember is the king's pawn open. It opens it up so that your queen can move because your queen can move anywhere. It's just one of those things that is considered a best practice and fundamental. So know your fundamentals means understand your controls. What do you have in place? Um, what security controls are available, how they function, how have they been potentially circumvented in the past if they have, and what limitations or constraints exist in those controls. So, test those controls. Are they functioning? How do we figure out, that balance of function versus security, right? Have they been circumvented before? And, figuring out if the risk is acceptable to our organization if we need to do something that's maybe not considered a best practice. So, speaking of best practices, harden your infrastructure. Look at past incidents, right? Look at things that have happened in the past. How have things been attacked, right? And one of the things that Ashok and I both cover pretty and are pretty, I guess, passionate or adamant about is the shared responsibility model within AWS and in the cloud. I still have the responsibility to ensure that anything I'm running, workloads, servers, et cetera, in the cloud, as well as on the cloud, my infrastructure controls are hardened and can prevent things that we know exist out there. So make sure that we're taking that shared responsibility model very seriously. AWS is setting up controls for the things that they are providing for us, but we still have that responsibility to ensure that we have things like logging turned on, endpoint protection, whatever it is that we're running. Firewalls are set up. There are constrained modes so that you can't just log in from anywhere, you can't RDP from anywhere, et cetera. And just really understand things like what are the top cloud threats. Identity is a huge topic that we're always talking about now. Study that and then understand how that impacts you and your cloud, and then just do the fundamental things very well. I know that's like a gimme, but do the fundamentals very well. Don't deviate from them, and if you do deviate, make sure that you have accounted for those risks and have buy-in from the folks that are kind of ultimately responsible. And then finally, studying the threat actors. What have they done? What gambits, to use a chess term, right? What gambits have they used, and what have other defenders done to protect their cloud? Use things like your threat intel reports, and Expel shares one out quarterly. What we've seen in the last quarter, and then things like your MITRE ATT&CK, your I don't know how we say it, Cape C or CAPEC, which is the one that kind of from MITRE that kind of concentrates on AppSec.
Jake, like you said, we are not, chess masters, right? But we do learn and follow a similar trend, like a chess master. Uh, it's very similar to how chess masters study historical games, but I think we are playing at a very higher stake, right? In the end, it's all about a pattern recognition, the root cause analysis, and understanding why and how these breaches happen. Past incidents actually provide a valuable insight into attacker tactics, and analyzing multiple incidents can reveal a common attack pattern, which helps you in effective threat detection and response. Historical data is actually a knowledge gold mine and can help you establish baselines, helps you create effective training programs, and tailor your security awareness programs to meet your requirements. Leveraging past data can actually help you stay ahead of compliance requirements, and even feed into predictive models for future threats. Let's take AWS CloudTrail as an example, which is a service that enables governance, compliance, and operational auditing. This service provides a comprehensive log of all the API calls in your AWS environment. And by analyzing past incidents through these logs, you can establish a baseline and identify unusual patterns on unauthorized access that may have attempted in your environment that could eventually lead to a security breach. Getting that visibility across your organization data also can be very challenging. This is where a service like Amazon Security Lake can actually help you automatically centralize security data from your AWS environment, from SaaS providers, from on premises, and even other cloud sources into a purpose built data lake stored in your account. Security Lake has adopted open source cybersecurity schema framework, an open standard that focuses on data storage and normalization and can help you get that complete understanding of your security data across your entire organization. One thing I want to stress here is that it's not just about looking back, it's also about using that history to move forward smarter and securely, essentially turning each past incident into a lesson that strengthens our defenses, making environment more resilient across future attacks. It is this proactive approach that actually helps us stay one step ahead in this ever evolving cybersecurity chess game.
Um,
Perfect.
I'm
Yeah, go
sorry,
ahead,
Ethan.
Jake. Go ahead.
I'm stealing knowledge gold mine. So thank you, Ashok.
No worries.
Yeah, so essentially just to summarize, right? Like Jake said, focus on your fundamentals, understand your security controls, have they been circumvented, and the risk acceptances you create, how does that affect your threat model, right? And then making sure, like Ashok and Jake are saying, understanding the shared responsibility model, understanding what controls AWS has in place and is responsible for, what controls and things you have to consider, right? And making sure that the top threats in the cloud that you know about and risks you know about, you're hardened against them, right? And then making sure you're studying the threat actors, you have the threat intelligence to kind of bake into all that. You're using useful frameworks to make sure your risks are reduced. Like Ashok was saying, making sure you have a good baseline, using that data to, both provide focus, using the different AWS tools out there to kind of collect that, and also using that data to, more than just look at the past, focus on what you can do in the future. It's great responses. Thanks, guys. So second question here is for you, Ashok. How can SecOps teams leverage the data they already have to improve their defenses?
Yeah, I think this is a crucial aspect for a SecOps team to maximize the value of data they already have. To explain this, let's break it down into a few key strategies, right? The first one is vulnerability management, right? It is important to know what all open issues you have in your environment and what should be prioritized to get patched. For example, Amazon Inspector, which is an automated security assessment service, can help you scan your Amazon EC2 instances, container images, and AWS Lambda functions for software vulnerabilities and unintended network exposure. SecOps teams often have to access a vast amount of data from various sources like network logs, endpoint data, cloud storage logs, and more. So data integration and correlation is the key here. By using a security information and event management system, also known as SIEM, or any advanced analytic platform, teams can identify patterns and anomalies, which might be very difficult to look at when you look at these each data sources in isolation. AWS Security Hub, which is a cloud security posture management service, can help here. It aggregates alerts from various AWS services and even third-party tools and partners, giving you a comprehensive view of your security posture. Security Hub basically eliminates the time-consuming and resource-intensive data normalization process by introducing AWS Security Finding format, which is a well-typed JSON format consisting of over 1,000 available fields. Data normalization and correlation helps you identify these resources, severities, and the timestamp in a consistent way, so you can easily identify, search, and look at the data and make those alerts more actionable. Another strategy basically is to leverage machine learning and AI, which can help SecOps team detect subtle patterns that might indicate sophisticated attack. This is particularly useful for identifying a zero-day attack or advanced persistent threat that might slip past traditional signature-based detection. Amazon Guard Duty is a good example here, which is a threat detection service that continuously monitors your AWS accounts and workloads for malicious activity and deliver detailed security findings. It uses AI and ML with integrated threat intelligence from AWS and leading third-party providers to help you secure your AWS workloads, accounts, and data from threats. Basically, a significant shift in your approach from periodic analysis to continuous monitoring. By implementing these strategies, SecOps teams can significantly enhance their ability to detect and respond to sophisticated attacks, even as an threat attack continue to evolve. The key here is to view existing data not just as a record of past events, but as a rich source of insight that can actually help drive proactive and adaptive defensive strategies.
Yeah, I want to kind of pile on there with what you said about vulnerability management, Ashok, and also, doing that continuous monitoring, making sure that it's not a periodic thing anymore, which is kind of a shortcoming of the past, right? We weren't doing things, we weren't building security into everything, we weren't doing this continuous monitoring, and I think that also kind of pivots or parlays into something else I want to talk about, which is that hypothesis-based threat hunting, right? Like looking at what shared intel is out there in the field and saying, okay, now that there's all these rich sources of data, because when I started in security, nobody shared data. This is a long time ago. If you had an incident, you called the FBI to help you, especially if it was something serious. But sharing that data, finding out what other people are seeing, and then looking in your environment, not only doing the scans, but looking in your environment, doing that threat hunting. Am I impacted by this? Have I seen this in my environment? And that can help to actually bolster and come up with new controls, bolster existing controls and help you come up with new controls for your cloud environments. And then another thing that we talked about already, I want to just continue to stress it: root cause analysis. Always looking back at what happened and really doing that deep, kind of post-mortem or hot wash or whatever we want to call it, to ensure that we're gathering all that data and making a record of it and using it to ensure that moving forward, we're not going to be affected by these things or impacted by these things again. Because it's like, hurt me once, shame on you. Hurt me the second time, shame on me for not being prepared, or something like that, to use a cliche. And that kind of goes back to, could we have caught things earlier, right? That's sort of what you want to look at in that root cause analysis, not in a punitive way, but in a learning sort of way.
Perfect. Yeah. So just to summarize here, essentially, right, you want to be looking at more data than just necessarily what's coming in through, real-time feeds. You want to be looking at the metadata on vulnerabilities and what have you across your environment to kind of stitch together that picture, right? And like what Jake was saying, beyond just looking at threat hunting in an IOC manner and just doing a scan on historical data, you want to be kind of looking at that with kind of a close eye magnifying glass to see if there's anything else that may pop up that can either maybe inform additional controls or catch something you may have missed with some of those automated tooling. And that all leads to the root cause analysis he was talking about, making sure we understand, where things went wrong, how we can improve in the future, and even answering the question, right, could we have caught different threats earlier, beyond just catching them at all, and making sure we have this continuous improvement mindset. So thanks for sharing those insights, guys. Let's move on to the second section here, which is executing the right moves, right? So back to our chess analogy, we have to execute what we've observed in the past, our plans, our different openings, our positions in real time to win chess games, in real time to prevent losses. This amount of information can be very overwhelming to analyze, especially, for example, if you're playing bullet chess against a very advanced opponent. And in security, it's kind of like that, except instead of playing bullet chess against one opponent, you're kind of playing bullet chess across hundreds of different boards at a time, and they're all demanding you to triage within seconds to reduce blast radius, right? And to make it even worse, you can't take breaks, right? Because attackers are attacking 24/7. And imagine trying to play, the World Chess Championship extremely tired and weary. It just does not set you up for success. You don't have to go through this alone. So let's talk to our experts to understand how we can tilt our playing field to our advantage. So, question number one for Jake here: what is your advice to teams who are struggling to understand what is business as usual versus an attack on your business?
Thanks, Ethan. Yeah, I have one word for this, and it is context, right? Context is key here. Full tech stack context. So if you're in the cloud and you're doing, whatever your workloads are, whatever you're doing in the cloud, you need to understand what those things are and how they impact or influence other maybe applications or API calls or things like that. Understanding the full context of what you're seeing. So leverage the metadata across the full stack, leverage the data across the full stack environment. And that's using things like Gardu, that's using things like CloudTrail. And it's looking at things like, are events actually notable, stitching those things together. This can be really, really difficult. And to Ethan's point with bullet chess, there's a game in contact sports and in the military called Bull in the Ring, where you're getting hit from a bunch of different ways, and it's supposed to teach you how to defend yourself. But that's kind of what I was thinking about when you were talking about, high impact bullet chess there. So, yeah, using an anecdote here, like things, like I said, things don't happen in isolation in the cloud, right? It's just like on-prem in a way. And so we're talking about like a user signing in from an unusual location with Okta and then performing, some highly privileged, changing ARNs or changing DNS binding on things within the cloud so that they have access now and establishing persistence. We want to be able to look for things like that are this, then that, but also kind of those murkier ones that look like maybe usual activity, but they could be bad. They could be anomalous. And so, in the context of Expel, we're leveraging some bots actually to do these. The both the application of rules. This happens. What is this thing happening? Is it something I actually care about? We call that a lead alert. Then the second set of bot processes, which we call Ruxy, so it's Josie and Ruxy. Ruxy is a context bot. Ruxy is gathering context from all your other tools and presenting them back to our analysts to be able to say, what are we actually seeing here? So having that context is really key here. Architect your environment also to reduce noise as much as possible. You can't always understand what every log message means, and so you may have to continue to watch those things. But over time, observing those things and monitoring those things, you may be able to say, well, this is something that we normally, see every day in and day out, and we maybe don't need to have as much noise coming from it. It's hard, right? That's why there's no such thing as no false positives. Using that data on what assets you have, knowing your environment really well, and then the last thing I want to say is back to Ethan's point: contain the blast radius, right? Figure out how you can use these native tools or maybe add-on tools from your other providers, like things like Okta, to be able to say, okay, sort of observing least privilege, right? Not zero trust necessarily, but least privilege. If you don't need access to something, you don't have access to something. If you need access to something, you have to maybe, uh, you know, do multi-factor authentication, a couple of things to be able to access that.
Jake rightly said, right? Many times dealing with this noise of monitoring is very challenging. But like you said, there are various effective ways to distinguish what a normal looks like versus a potential attack, right? We have been talking about baselining your environment, right? So I think the first and foremost is you need to understand what a normal actually looks like in your environment. This means thoroughly documenting your infrastructure, applications, and typical usage pattern. Again, throwing an example here, Amazon CloudWatch is a service which gives you that visibility into system-wide performance and allow users to set alarms, automatically react to changes, and gain a unified view of operational health. It can help you establish that baseline metrics for things like CPU usage, network traffic, and API calls. And then you can actually leverage that intelligent alerting through CloudWatch anomaly detection to spot deviation from this norm. We talked about CloudTrail earlier. All these logs and historical data can actually help you establish that baseline and help you that define that what that normal looks like in your specific environment. Jake, you talked about data context. I think data context is absolutely critical here. Cross-functional collaboration with other IT and business teams to help understand that context of data can really help you distinguish between a benign anomaly and an actual threat. We talked about AWS Security Hub earlier, right? You can use it to aggregate and prioritize security findings from multiple sources. A simple thing like resource tagging and segmentation can help you quickly understand the context of that alert. Remember, the goal here is to transform that raw alert data into an actionable intelligence that enables informed decision making and effective incident response. While we talk about these tools and automation, I do not want to underestimate the value of human expertise. Invest in training your teams to understand your specific environment and to recognize patterns that might indicate threat. The goal here is to refine your signals over time, creating a system that actually helps you focus on what truly matters. And by combining these tools with the strategy of continuous improvement and human expertise, you can effectively cut through the noise and quickly identify potential threats to your business and to your applications.
Perfect. Thanks for those answers. And just to summarize here, right, like Jake was saying, first thing you want to do is make sure you have full context across your tech stack, right? So beyond just what's happening in the cloud, make sure you understand what's happening in your identity apps, your SaaS apps, and what have you, and leverage all that information to stitch together a complete picture, right? And that'll just give you more signals, more confidence, more correlation in terms of if something bad is happening or not, right? And then, second step, of course, is try to architect your environment to reduce the noise, right? So reducing things like ClickOps will help you create less noise that you may have to investigate. And then finally, if something does go wrong, let's make sure we reduce the blast radius to give our teams time to reduce the impact. And then Ashok here, layered on and talked about how we want to layer on intelligence and data analytics with all that data to make sure, we have the signals being surfaced and provided a couple specific AWS tools to help tactically implement these concepts, right? And the last thing, not to be remiss to say, is making sure we arm our people, our humans, with this information, with this expertise, so they're able to make the final decisions quickly and able to perform at a high level. So thanks, guys. Second question in this section here, and this is for Ashok. How can organizations measure the effectiveness of their security as it stands today?
Thanks, Ethan. I think this is an excellent and highly relevant question in today's rapidly evolving cyber security landscape. You're absolutely right. The cybersecurity landscape is in constant flux, and it can indeed feel like a never-ending race. However, there are concrete ways to measure and improve your security posture. You mentioned earlier KPIs or benchmarks, right? To begin with, I think you, as an organization, need to know what you're measuring against. What's your benchmark? What's your KPI? Know what you're measuring yourself against. What a good looks like. Know about your MTTD or MTTDR. Know how many incidents were opened in a in a specified duration and how many were actually resolved. What is your average time to patch? Compare that to an industry benchmark to see how you are performing against an industry standard. And sure, you have a comprehensive view of your security posture, which is available in your environment, how many accounts you're using. We talked about various AWS services like AWS Security Hub, which gives you a comprehensive view of your security posture. And to dig deeper, you can use services like AWS Config, AWS Inspector, Guard Duty, and CloudTrail to really understand the configuration, activity, and potential vulnerabilities in your environment. We all come from various security backgrounds, and especially in cybersecurity, the key is defense in depth, which is absolutely critical. And following security best practices can actually help you. It can be as simple as using a strong password policy, using multi-factor authentication, using organization and service control policies to enforce stricter access controls across all your AWS accounts and organization. um, you know, Ransomware is a big problem. And to ensure you are basically ready for it, a very simple strategy is to use a data backup. You can use web application firewalls to protect your web apps. To identify sensitive data, you can use an AWS service like Amazon Macy, and you can use AWS Shield to guard against DDoS attack. I've mentioned multiple AWS services here and features that you can leverage. Um, just to stress the fact that it's all about building that multi-layer defense and using the right tool for the right job. And of course, it's not just the right tool, right? It's also about the process and people. Conduct tabletop exercises to test your incident response plan, including specific scenarios, even for ransomware attacks. At the end of the day, it's all about creating that security scorecard, tracking improvements over time, and making sure you are adapting right alongside these evolving threats. It's a constant battle, but with the right tools, right people, and strategy, you can definitely give yourself an upper hand like in a chess match.
Yeah, I I can't stress enough how much I think that the KPIs kind of feed back into what you're saying there. Know what good looks like, and for me, some of the things again, I've already hit on it a couple of times, and people are probably going to get tired of hearing it. But going back to those foundations, those things that you were talking about, Ashok, where you're doing all these things right, you're doing all these things consistently. For me, that means things that we've already been doing in the past, and then paying attention to the output, logging a golden image. I'm not putting something out there that's just haphazard, right? I'm really consciously making decisions about what I'm going to expose to the rest of the world. And again, least privilege, right? knowing what we're doing, knowing what we're measuring against and how we're getting there, and the foundations or the fundamentals I keep coming back to. And again, something you said about the tabletop exercises, the time to uh, open your incident response plan isn't when you're responding to an incident, right? Everybody knows this, that you can't just blow the dust off the cover and open it up as something's happening. It's just not going to work. It's not going to come, the outcome's not going to be good. Um, whether this incident response plan involves a partner, whether it involves automation, whatever the case is, practice it. It's just like, uh, doing things in practice helps you to get there in production, right? Helps you to be there. Um, there's some kind of crass things from my military background that I could say about preparing, but the point is, make sure that your playbooks are established and well known amongst your team, that you have that knowledge in hand. You know what you have, assets, inventory assets, know what things are out there and what are, who owns what are the lines of ownership, and then incident response training. And, another point to Ashok, or that Ashok made before, was that this is not a set and forget thing. This is a constantly evolving and constantly, you have to continue to do these things constantly. It's hard, and we all know this, I think, but you know, getting out there with your incident response plans, with knowing what you have in your shop or in your cloud environment, and then looking at what your coverages look like as far as against maybe other frameworks. Again, going back to things like MITRE and some of those other things.
Yeah, no, I love what you guys are saying about benchmarking, right? Beyond just like the KPIs in terms of MTTT, MTTR, right? Is understanding how you're comparing against your peers, and like what you just said, Jake, about coverage mapping against MITRE and what have you. And then extending that to, making sure you have those defense in-depth plans with all the different tools that Ashok mentioned, and make sure you have arming the humans to be able to use those tools to their full potential. Then finally, just, of course, testing and making sure you have clear lines of ownership. The incident response plans are not just dusted off right when you have an incident, and you are measuring and have root cause analysis and understand what you're doing, based on those tests, what they reveal, and how that is going to improve your security and reduce your risk. That's great. So finally moving on to the last section here, thinking 5 moves ahead. So in chess, we definitely have to think about more than our immediate next move. Got to think about the move after that, and the move after that, and the move after that. So how do you prevent yourself from falling into a bad situation, right? In cloud security, it's really about shifting from reactive to proactive. And that really starts with developing strong guardrails. So let's talk to our experts here, our people in the field, on how we can see that in the future. First question for you, Jake, is how can we develop a more proactive approach in cloud security?
Let me figure out how to turn off mute here, and more proactive approach in security. So, that whole thinking, that whole thinking 5 moves ahead thing is going to be really difficult, right? And we know that there's a shortage of really qualified professionals maybe out there, but I think approaching things with a continuous learning and a curious mindset for exploration and learning what you need to know about. There's whole huge databases or knowledge bases on AWS about how things work, and there's a lot of help out there. There's also a lot of examples of how to do things. So using those to your advantage, learning those things as a security practitioner that's maybe transitioning from, maybe endpoint or some other role. We all wear many hats these days. Even in my role, doing a webinar, I'm doing demos, but I'm also, doing some other things as well. We all know that this is the reality of security. It's different in operations, obviously, but AWS has some of the best free resources out there. There's also those paid resources, but there's things like the industry groups, understanding, what other researchers are seeing, understanding of those attack vectors and staying informed about emerging threats. We can't know everything, but that's where partnership, and that's where things like, uh, kind of having a good knowledge management system on for your own learning, can come in handy. Second thing I want to talk about is something that, a lot of people have talked about is that active defender kind of mentality. So taking that adversarial mindset. doing things like simulations, and the red or blue teaming, purple teaming, put yourself in the adversary's shoes as much as possible, and think about, only in a safe and legal way, of course, but think about what they're doing, because they don't have those constraints, right? They don't have to be safe or legal. But try to ask the questions that you think that the adversaries are asking. And then, of course, trying to anticipate what they're going to do next within your own environment. Understand what the high value targets are. Are your executive users targeted? Do you see these phishing campaigns with attempts across multiple users to try to get in your environment, try to get people to click on things? um, Something that Ashok mentioned before, you know, was making those good backups and things so that you have, a good record or a good image when something happens, because, really these things will happen. But assume failure, look at things like, how do you ensure redundancy? How do you do your disaster recovery? And then for me, fundamentally, um, something that we didn't do in the past, and that has, I mean, it's evolved, and I think it's a better situation now, but security by design. Just do the fundamentals flawlessly and without deviation. That includes your vuln scanning, your patching, measuring all of these things, making sure your images that go into production are safe, making sure things are scanned, making sure everybody's on board with these things. It's not that, there's typically going to be things that get changed, out of band or without change control, but those things can typically lead to, problems down the road. And then treating security as if, it is a team activity, making sure that everybody's involved in it. This is something that I think we still see is silos. And that's something that everybody's got to try to work against. And sometimes as a security practitioner, you don't just need to wear the hat of expert in technical stuff, but you need to be a little bit of a diplomat, and things like that as well, to be able to convince people that, the right way to do things is the secure way to do things.
Great points. I think all these points are really important here. And I don't think I can stress this enough, right? Like just in a chess match, right? Security uh, and success in security basically is all about anticipating those moves and planning ahead, right? You touched upon, learning and, evolving and adapting, right? This is all about how you can, get the latest information. There's a ton of information out there in form of, security bulletins, security blogs, and by staying on top of these, you can actually anticipate new types of threats and adjust your defenses accordingly. Uh, Earlier, you talked about root cause analysis and even predictive analytics, right? When you think about different mechanisms, AWS gives you different services and features. And one of those services that can actually be leveraged here is Amazon Detective. It uses these machine learning patterns to analyze what's happening in your environment, helps you identify potential security issues that can become a major problem later on. And with all these different features and options, right, we cannot ignore automation, right? You need to ensure you have automated responses to potential threats and have dry runs to ensure the effectiveness. Things like public S3 buckets or access keys are very predictable and can be easily automated. Infrastructure as a code is another key strategy. By using AWS CloudFormation or Terraforms, you can actually have version control infrastructure. This allows you to quickly roll back changes if you detect a security issue, or even rapidly deploy pre-hardened environment. Using ISE is like having a multiple game plan ready to go. Lastly, like you have mentioned a few times already, we need to test the effectiveness of all these controls, right? Just like a chess match, chess master actually runs through multiple scenarios, we should be conducting regular security drills and tabletop exercises. Run multiple scenarios that you can help your team respond in different situations. I think if I summarize this, in the end, in both chess and cloud security, the goal is not just to react to your opponent's move. It's all about creating a strong, flexible position that allows you to control the game and the narrative.
I think that comes back to what you said also earlier too, and I wrote it down, is not just not losing, but actually winning. I think is something that either you or Ethan said. Ashik, I think you said it, but that's the goal there, right? Not just not losing, to come out on top. And again, this is going to be difficult. It always has been and always will be, but understanding that that's the ultimate goal, and putting those pieces in place to make that a reality, or hopefully try to get closer to it.
Yeah, no,
Absolutely.
definitely. That's the ultimate goal. And I love what you guys both said about, continuously learning, going out into the field, talking to your partners, talking to your industry, understanding, what's ahead and how do you get ahead of it, right? then taking kind of that information and making sure you have an adversarial mindset, understanding, the high value targets in your organization, where you have to do attack chain analysis to, kind of break that chain of attack. Then making sure, beyond that, right? Assuming something goes wrong, have your redundancy planning, designing for security, and then making sure your organization is playing as a team and aligned on what to do, right? And like Ashok was saying, kind of picking those low hanging fruits to, pre-plan some automated responses, have some infrastructure as code to make sure, when things do go wrong, you have, things that help accelerate, arm you to respond, to have those good outcomes, as we were just talking about. Great. So last question here in this section. This is for you, Ashok. How can organizations put up guardrails to help them avoid vulnerability pitfalls such as misconfigurations?
Ethan, misconfiguration can be a major risk. If I give a simple analogy, it's like leaving the back door of your house unlocked. It doesn't matter how strong your front door is. If there
Mm,
is an easy way from the back, your defenses is as weak as it can be. I do want to stress on one thing, right? You and Jake both talked about the shared responsibility model. And it is very important to understand this model in this context, right? Where AWS is responsible for security of the cloud, and you as a customer are basically responsible for security in the cloud. What that means is AWS is responsible for protecting the infrastructure that runs all the AWS services, whereas your responsibility is actually determined by the service you select. This shared responsibility model can help you relieve your operational burden, but misunderstanding in this model can actually lead to a lot of misconfigurations and a lot of security gaps. AWS actually provides you with a lot of different powerful tools to help you set up these guardrails and avoid these configuration pitfalls in general. Let's talk about AWS Config, which is a service that enables you to assess, audit, and evaluate the configuration of your AWS resources. It's like having a constant auditor checking your configuration against best practices. You can set up your rules to automatically detect and alert on configuration issues and even automate and remediate responses in few scenarios. For example, you could set up rules to ensure all your S3 buckets are private by default. And I think Jake talked about golden images earlier. You can also put a check that ensures all your EC2 instances are running your approved AMIs. Uh, Amazon Q is a great tool you can leverage here. It's having an AI-powered cloud expert at your fingertips, which can be incredibly useful for avoiding misconfigurations and enhancing your overall security. You can ask simple questions in natural languaging, um, which are security related as well. Then in terms of guardrails, we can use AWS CloudFormation Guard, which is basically a policy as a code tool that helps you define rules for your infrastructure as a code template. It's like having a code review specifically for your infrastructure, catching misconfigurations before they even make it to production. When it comes to access, you can use AWS IAM Access Analyzer, which continuously monitors your resource-based policies to identify resource shared with external entities. Additionally, we talked about this, right? Security drills, tabletop exercises, running these security assessments, even such as AWS Security Hub compliance checks or inspector scans to identify and address any misconfigurations and integrate those assessments into your CI/CD pipeline to catch this misconfiguration early in your development process. The key here is to make security an integral part of your cloud operations. Like Jake said earlier, it should not be an afterthought. It's all about creating that culture of security first across your organization to make it a success.
Yeah, I like that. Secure by design is what we were calling it here.
Yeah.
So, diving a little bit deeper into that, same things, those golden images, making sure that accounts are, are audited and that you don't have, crazy amounts of admins and things out there. Least privilege, know what you have and know what assets are owned by whom, and then prioritize what's worth remediating. These things are all basics and fundamentals. And with all the tools that are available, and all the knowledge out there about these things, it's really made it a lot easier to be able to be secure, just as part of your day-to-day operating or your business as usual, rather than it as an afterthought.
perfect. Yeah. I love what you guys talked about in terms of, it doesn't matter how strong your front door is if your back door is open, right? So let's make sure we are looking at, the full attack surface and not letting an easy way for an attacker to get in. I know, Ashok, you talked about a bunch of different tools that could help us do that. When we'd be remiss to not talk about AI in 2024. So thanks for dropping those tools. And then Jake, of course, like kind of double down here on the secure by design, right? So making sure we have account vending machines and making sure we have our secure by design architecture, so we don't put these misconfigurations in production if we can help it, right? And that of course comes with least privilege, understanding who owns what assets, so we can trace down the root cause, making sure we're continuously monitoring all this, right? And understanding and prioritizing what specifically we want to be remediating, right, based on different data sources, whether it's vulnerability, reachability, or if something is publicly facing, right? So love what you guys said. And that, I believe, brings us to the end here. And of course, given this is Expel's webinar, we will have a shameless plug. So like we talked about in the beginning, right? Security, especially in the cloud, is a shared responsibility, and we want to help you, take some of that responsibility off your plate, not to our plate, right? So it becomes our responsibility. So beyond, achieving business objectives in the cloud by helping you adopt cloud quickly while we handle security, we have all our different automations, like Jake talked about, our experts, our workflows to help you get peace of mind while understanding that the alerts will not fall through the cracks and you have full coverage, right? And kind of taking a look at our analogy here, past, present, future with chess. In the past, we have our full threat hunting service, which takes a look at, hypothesis-based hunts. Well, we'll look at the raw data itself with our experts to see if there's anything that may have been missed with automation. Present, of course, is our Expel MDR service, award-winning, that, combines all this information, our experts and our transparent security to deliver results in real time. And then finally, of course, in the future, we have vulnerability prioritization, where we stitch together threat intelligence across many, many different open source and own proprietary threat intelligence to deliver a prioritized list of what you should focus on. And we provide all this very transparently within our workbench that has, specifically in the cloud, 8+ years of custom detections. And we provide the custom logic specifically in the workbench itself, so you can see exactly how we're detecting things. And of course, we meet you where you are, right? So we have over 125 tools and integrations to help you make the most of your security investment. And we have our time to value measured in hours and not weeks, because we're plugging into most of these tools with APIs in kind of an agentless fashion. So we can help hit the ground running as fast as possible. And then our cloud experts are looking at all this 24/7, 365. So unfortunately, they will not be taking Christmas off, but that allows your team to take Christmas off, right? So they can quickly understand and help prioritize, what is actually worth looking at, so you guys can rest easy. And finally, kind of talk about the future here. We provide reports and peer comparisons of what we see in other companies to help guide you on reducing the number of alerts, improving compliance, and how you improve your security overall. So that's Expel, and now we will be taking questions. So looking at the Q&A queue here, let's see, first question that we will tackle is just for our experts here. What steps can we take to simplify cloud security without compromising control?
Well, yeah. Again, back to the basics, right? Um, old golden images, your ISE, infrastructure as code templates, have security requirements baked right into it, and then have that monitoring going on as well. Simplifying cloud security is actually, it's actually kind of a big, it can be a difficult thing, but you just want to make sure that you're in control of what's going on in your environment. And I think that goes back to making sure that, again, security is baked in, and that you're, looking at what's working for others, as well as then making sure that it's customized to your environment. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, not allowing things to kind of go on that you're not aware of is a huge one.
Yeah. And I just want to echo that sentiment, right? Secure by design, at least in the past and even nowadays as well, right? Many times security is an afterthought, right? So secure by design, think about security. Jake mentioned about ISE. I think it's all about, kind of a shifting left approach and making sure uh, you have security at the beginning of your pipeline, your implementation, so it never comes as an afterthought. So things like as simple as thinking of security in the beginning can mitigate a lot of risk towards the end.
Yeah, and just to add on there from my perspective, right? Like Ashok is saying, security by design, try to implement security in the beginning, but also making sure there's like a golden kind of paved path here so people are using those templates, right? And that'll help you simplify your security just by, having fewer templates being used in your environment, having fewer things to focus on. And that'll just help you understand, where is it going wrong, remediate in one place, one template, and hopefully solving many issues in production, right? Sweet. So, question number one. So, here's another question coming in from our audience here. Can MDR really differentiate between a true threat and noise in the cloud? And if so, how?
Yeah, I think yes is the answer. And how do we do that at Expel, right? Well, again, very similar to the cloud itself. We're taking that API forward, or that API first approach. So we're able to quickly gather not only lead alerts or things that we see as anomalous or that may be concerning, but also then gather the context to bolster that or to make that decision, because this is definitely all about decision support, to make that decision easier for the analyst who is then presented with all that data. So doing that very quickly is what gives us the ability to get that data very quickly to the analyst so that they can then look at it and say, have we seen this before? And you're really benefiting when you're partnering with Expel as an MDR. You're really benefiting from that network effect that is out there. Like we have, a lot of customers, and you're able to, regardless of the size of your company, you're able to benefit from what other customers have seen, of course, in an anonymized way, but you're able to benefit from that as a customer as well. So expertise of the people, but also quickly gathering not only an alert, but then context around it automatically. And then the ability to share that out and to ask questions of that data, not only, from the analyst side, but actually asking the customer, did you expect this? Is this something you've seen before? If we can't answer that question. So that collaboration is really important there. But Expel was born in the cloud. We're cloud native. What does born in the cloud mean? We've concentrated on being able to do a lot of the same functions. Again, APIs are a huge part of that you see in cloud providers themselves.
Jake, that's a very important point, and I do want to just stress a bit on that, right? When you say built on cloud, companies and solutions built on cloud, they have a close affinity and understanding of how the environment works in cloud. So that gives you always an additional edge compared to others.
Perfect. And just last question we'll take from the audience here as we are coming up on time. How does MDR and by extension real-time kind of threat detection fit into an overall cloud security strategy?
Well, I mean, obviously I know Expel, and that's what we're kind of talking about here. We're able to use all those tools that you may have, your CSPM, your other add-on tools, and as well as the native tools like CloudWatch, CloudTrail, GuardDuty, those things. We're able to watch those things and pull those things in. Again, providing that context and that kind of that deep understanding of what's going on and what an event actually means. So rather than being an alert forwarder or an amplifier, we're able to take those things and really dig down. Look at historical baselines again, like we talked about before. Going back 30 days, things that we've seen, things we haven't seen, but looking at all those different tools to provide that context and to give you that quick decision support.
Sweet. Well, that's all, folks. Thanks for the time today. And as I said at the beginning of this call, this will be sent out, a recording will be sent out for you to watch at your own leisure. Thanks again for everybody's time, and we will see you next time.